This is the bit where I should be playing music.
Oh, I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I should play something tonight. It's really bad though, because I used to do it and I think my music choices started offending people. So, and when I,
What were you playing? Dancehall.
yeah, dancehall basically. And then when I turn off explicit, then there's only 2 songs. So there's just no
Yeah.
point. I should have different music choices maybe. Maybe that would be the idea. Lovely.
Awesome.
Hi everybody. How's everyone doing after, I think you're maybe a week or two into JavaScript now? How's JavaScript going, boot campers? Are you loving it? Is it the best thing you've ever done? You're having a really good time? Okay, that's good. I see one of the celebration things. Rashan, were you going to say something?
Yeah, that I'm surprisingly enjoying it. So yeah.
Oh, that's good.
It's good. It's good. It's a great boot camp. Thank you. Thank you.
Yay, I'm glad that you're liking it. Yeah, we'll see how you. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. I was going to say we'll see how you feel when you get to React, but you're going to enjoy the whole journey. It's going to be great.
How are you doing?
Starlet, how are you?
I am hanging in there.
That's good. Good to have you today. What time is it at the moment? I want to say it's like 11 o'clock.
It's 12:30
for
here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank
Starlet
you.
was on one of our programs earlier this year, but it's been coming along to loads of events and stuff like that as well. It's been awesome. Lovely to have you.
Thank you. I'm so glad I made this one today. I'm like, I know I've missed a few of them, but still, in this situation I'm in, but who knows? I might hear something great today, as always.
You always catch up online anyway. So if you ever miss anything, there's always online to catch up.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I reckon that we should get started. I'm going to start the recorder. I should have just told you all that this meeting is being recorded. I hope that's okay with all of you. So thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. Today, we have got a fantastic session to have a look at different roles in tech. So the session's called The Spotlight on Roles in Tech, and it's one of our empowerment days for the Black Coder Bootcamp. We have been running the Black Coder Bootcamp since last year. It's a fantastic program where people can become full stack developers. This is our second time running it, and we've actually got 2 new cohorts starting, one in October and one in November as well. So bring on training a shed load of Black women to become full stack developers and then get into jobs. Loving it. It's our dream. We're loving it. And it's really good to hear that so many of you are getting on with it well and getting on okay with it too. We also have some people from Coding Black Females and Neo Enterprise who have joined along as well to find out more about roles in tech. So the fantastic women that we have with us today, we've got Andrea Burris, who is a user researcher. This is where I'm going to get it all wrong. We've got Nicola Martin, who is works in quality assurance, I believe. That's the way to say it, right? Excellent. And then Stephanie Itami, who works in cybersecurity. So we've got fantastic people. I'm going to hand over to each of them to give a bit of an introduction about who they are and what they do, and then we'll move into a panel. Throughout the session, if you've got any questions that you would like to ask, please post them in the chat, but we also have time at the end for questions too. So let's crack on. I'm going to ask Nicola first. Could you give us an introduction about yourself?
I can. Hi, everybody. I hope you've had a lovely day today. As has been mentioned, my name is Nicola Martin. So my job is actually more than quality assurance. So my particular role right now is head of quality for a company called Adaga. And Adaga are in the defense space, but my actual role looks at quality control, quality management, and assurance as well. So I get involved in testing on one day, and I actually have a test team that works across several different agile teams within our company. And I also look at things like standards and ethics and all kinds of regulatory stuff as well. So yeah, I got a very varied job, but I look across quality across the whole company. It's not just the product, but I also look at business processes and things like that as well. So that's what I do right now. Predominantly through my career, I've been in testing, or I've been a business analyst or project manager. And I've been all the way from the very beginnings of testing career all the way up to where I am now. Outside of work, I also volunteer for the BCS, British Computer Society, and your group may have heard something about that due to your connection with Black coding females as well. So I do a lot of volunteer roles for them. Mostly I work as an inclusion officer for several committees that they have, BCS Women, and also their software testing specialist group as well. And I also have just joined the LGBTQI group as well. But I don't know what exactly I'll be doing for them at the moment, but I'm just glad to be a part of that group as well, and you know, being an ally and helping there. And outside of BCS, I also do mentoring for AFB UK, and also work with Women in Tech Global UK, as well as their head of mentorship and education. So I have a very full job. It's not full stack like you guys, but you know, it's a very full job, and I keep myself busy and out of trouble. So that's what I do when I'm not working. But yeah, that's a quick introduction for me.
Nicola, that's amazing. I assume
that's a lot, isn't it?
I kind of feel anxiety hearing all the things you do. That's amazing. I love it. Good to know that you're able to give back so much as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Andrea, how about you? Could you introduce yourself for everybody, please?
Absolutely not after that. So that was brilliant. So I'll keep it brief because I won't go over some of the questions I think we might answer later. But I am a senior user researcher at Tills.com. I've had, I guess, a varied background within the research field. I currently manage the research team, in particular with a focus on international research and making sure we are giving localized experiences in our different markets across Europe. Outside of this, I also do some mentoring as well. Unfortunately, I don't have a long list of things, but I do some mentoring. So if anyone is ever interested in that, so do let me know.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Andrea. And Stephanie, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I think a bit about my background. So it's quite unique. I'm currently doing my PhD in information security. So my day-to-day is I'm currently researching labor and surveillance and how people are monitored in their workplace or at home by employers. Outside of that, I run a group called SEDIA, and that's us just trying to get more Black and minority ethnic women into cybersecurity. And I also do art. So I have like a postcard company where I do West African art in case anyone is interested in that. My background is quite varied. So I've done work with BBC Africa, I've done work in international development, and how I got into cybersecurity was through intelligence within the UK government. So I'm super excited to talk about unique ways in which you can get into cybersecurity.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm looking forward to delving into this. I think it's going to be really valuable for everybody who's listening. So one of my first questions really is around what an actual day in your role looks like. So what I want people to know is, you know, if I'm in user research, if I'm in cybersecurity, what does that actually look like? How is it, you know, do I sit at a computer all day, like writing research questions, or am I coding things? I don't know. So it'd be good to know. And I think that because a few of you have mentioned a few different roles, especially you, Nicola, you mentioned a lot of things that you've done previously as well. it would be great to hear examples from, you know, project management, business analysis and testing, so that people can get a real feel for that. I am going to go to Andrea first. It'll be great to hear about, yeah, what you do as a user researcher. What does your day look like?
Okay, well, I would say I don't generally have a very, my day, my weeks are very varied. Like, it's because I'm doing sort of a management and I'm also doing research, it's very varied across the day. But you might find yourself doing research, as you said, writing research questions, kind of planning research. A lot of what you do when it comes to, and maybe I should take a step back actually and just explain what a user researcher does a little bit. But we essentially, we speak to the customers, we speak to the people who are touching the technology and find out what are their needs and help the company match those needs and make sure that we are optimizing the experience so that they are more engaged and they're more likely to use our products. So my day might look like planning a piece of work to delve into a particular problem we've seen, or if we've seen drop off at a certain point in our sign up flow, to delve into that with customers. And now, because of the pandemic, that's predominantly online now. So which is actually a good thing, I think, because before we would have people come to the office, but obviously that will limit your pool. So you'll have people that are predominantly near London, as opposed to now I can speak to somebody who's in Liverpool, in Manchester, whatever, and get their opinions as well. We also end up consulting with a lot of other parts of the business. So we work quite closely with a product manager and a product designer. And they will usually be trying to figure out looking at the problems and trying to take what we find out and turn that into a better design, and then we'll test that. So you generally work quite closely with them, and sometimes that might be more on a consultancy kind of basis, in that you'll help sort of coach them through their own work and their own research, because they might do some user testing, or it might be a case that you are, I say plotting, but I mean planning a larger piece of work in which you are going to explore a whole new area or a different, something that you'll do yourself. And normally the researchers within my team will do like the larger pieces of research. On top of that, there's strategic work to think about. What do we do long term? That's something which we're constantly sort of planning for the future of how we actually, I guess, shape the opportunities we see coming up. And when do we always want to, research always comes first, so we need to get in there before something becomes a bigger opportunity. And yeah, that can also be doing, sometimes it's like recruiting for a German user research piece or a French user research piece. So sometimes we have to work with translators to figure out how to do that. So so it can be very varied, and you'll always be at a different point in the research process. It might be planning, it might be the actual doing, which is normally done over 2 days, or it might be the analysis, which might be over a week. But yeah, it's generally pretty varied in my role, but it's always really interesting, and you're allowed to be curious and to like follow like interesting things that you find and be like, oh, I wonder what that's about, and talk to data and find out some data to back up things that you found, and kind of build a bigger picture and kind of help the whole team see what the problem is and how we can actually action it with some real, you know, making the right changes. So yeah, that would be a day in my, well, just my life actually.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's great that it sounds so varied, but also that you can bring different parts of yourself into it as well, which sounds, yeah, really useful. Thank you. Nicola, how about you? So in, I guess, your main role, but then also the other roles you've done, firstly, it's actually, we probably should have started with this question, but, you know, what is that? What does that actually mean, that role? And then what do you do in that role as well?
So my role is not a standard role as such. So because it was a startup, I've pretty much created this role myself. I've curated a role for myself. And it suits the company and what they need, and it also suits me because I get to do a lot of stuff outside off the back of it, and I also get to learn a lot and work with a lot of groups that I would never have had a chance to do if I just stuck to pure testing. So I've been in tech for a long time, so this is actually my 21st year in tech, so probably almost the same as age as some of you lot. I've been doing it this long, but I've done lots of different test roles. So when I started, I was a test analyst, like most people do start even now. QA analyst, probably be the equivalent now. And I just worked my way up. So for a few years when I first started working, I was working permanently within a company and just learning the ropes. I did my first couple of permanent roles, learned the ropes of testing, just really got certified and all the rest of it, and just picked up as many skills as I could. Automation was becoming a thing, so that was something key to start looking at back then. And then I decided to go contracting, just because the market was so unstable and they were, making people redundant every 18 months or something like that. And I thought, I can make more money and I can work on stuff that I want to work on. So I ended up just contracting and doing lots of different test roles in my contract career. And that lasted for about 11 years before I decided I should go back to permanent, because there's certain things you do as a contractor that you miss out on as a contractor, I feel. Like the idea of being within a team and just feeling like you're part of something, like you could do some work for somebody and they're just like, yeah, thanks, we pay you every day for that, so we don't need to be that grateful. Whereas when you're permanent, you get more thanks for it, I don't know, or more appreciation for it, I think. And also you get to be closer to your teammates, which I didn't get before. And so I missed that, and that's one of the reasons I went back to permanent work. And then from there, going back to permanent work in 2016, I've just stayed on this path and I've just worked my way up to where I am now. So I guess the equivalent of what I do would be either just one below C level, so one below a leadership role, I guess. And I right now report to, who do I report to at the moment? I will be reporting to CTO, or actually I think CISO, so the Information Security Officer. One of those guys on leadership is one that I'll be reporting to, but we're having a bit of a change around in our reporting structure. So at the moment, that's where I am. So I literally sit just one level before leadership, but that's taken me years to get to this point. Yeah, I don't know if that's really answered that.
Yeah, it's really useful. I think that it's really useful to hear about your role, but then also it would be good to probably go back and touch on contracting afterwards as well. So they're different.
Yeah, and I mean, as we mentioned before, I've done when I was contracting, I actually did project management for a while, and I've also been a BA. And I know I could turn my hand to being a BA again. I don't think I'd want to do the PM role or product role. That's too stressful. But I think I like where I am now. But yeah, I could, potentially at any point be a BA if I wanted to be. Yeah, but that isn't going to be my next step. My next step is actually going into AI regulation, which is a whole other session all by itself. But that's going to be one of the next big things if you're looking to move into any roles. Get yourself skilled up in AI and move into regulation, where you go into companies and consult on whether or not the models that they're building are meeting the EU regulations. That will be a lot of money in that too.
Oh, that's a useful tip. Somebody has just asked as well, what is a BA?
Oh, business analyst.
Yeah.
So
if you could explain a bit about what.
So when I was a business analyst, or when I've done that role before, it's a lot of data analysis. It's a lot of finding out what the processes are supposed to be for projects, and basically putting that into something that everybody else within the project understands. It might be that you're writing up the documentation that actually needs to be signed off. So the requirements from a client, for example, that they come to you and they say, we want this and we want this and we want all these customizations for something you're selling off the shelf. So a business analyst then goes through and says, okay, so let's write down the processes for whatever we need to create. or whatever we need to build, and they make sure that that's in a logical state to get signed off. It might not be documentation as such anymore. It might be that those documents are internal for the company, and then you build off of that, say, stories for Jira if you're doing Agile. So yeah, it's quite a varied role, but it comes with quite a lot of client-facing responsibility. And if you get those requirements wrong, that could be like a lot of money in terms of fines for your company, or loss of a good client. So it's quite a stressful job. If you're just working on business as usual stuff, then being a BA is not hard at all. But if you're working on high profile stuff, it can be. Like when I was a BA, I was working on the minister's expenses system. So that was really high profile and really stressful. And once I'd done that, I told them I'd happily do testing for them. So I did testing as well. So, it depends. And I've also done BA role for, what were they? They were basically providing software to restaurants so that they could log hours of staff, make sure that they had enough staff on call. So it was like a hospitality company basically. But I did BA work for them as well. And yeah, it was interesting, but it's never, I don't feel the same way as I do when I do software testing, for example. That's my skill set. That's my base. I think people have a mindset for certain roles. And I definitely think that I'm a tester to my core. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of the touch points there with the different roles that you've done. Stephanie, cybersecurity, it'd be great to know about what you do in your role, but then if somebody else were working in cybersecurity, what would they expect from that role as well?
Yeah, no worries. I think my day-to-day is pretty much just research, talking to people, trying to find out things about my area of specialism. So in case anyone is thinking of doing their PhD, the government is investing heavily in that. So you get paid for your PhD instead of actually paying for your PhD. So if you're interested in that, let me know. And there are CDTs in UCL, Royal Holloway, and other universities. So that's a great way to get sponsored. So it's just day-to-day reading groups, talking to people, just research. The hours are not defined, so you can work overtime. But if it's something that, or you're someone who you like to be a master of your own time, I'll definitely recommend it. I think previous stuff that I've done, intelligence, that's a bit more different. So with that, you would have to be trained. So I was trained by the government body that I was working with. And then it's about gathering intelligence, working with different teams, and then creating reports to say, what does this intelligence mean and what is the implication of it for the government. So my area was modern slavery, human trafficking, and online child sexual exploitation. So looking at those things and seeing how it was affecting the government. For those interested in cybersecurity, I would say the best way to think about it is information security, which is you're trying to protect information. So that could be auditing, it could be data privacy, it could be identity and management systems, or it's information security systems, which is you're trying to protect the systems that hold this critical data. So it could be IoTs, it could be computers, it could be mobile phones. And I think I'm going to share a good website which shows the 17 domains within cybersecurity, but it's good for you to know the domains because then it's easy for you to map out your career. So when people come to me and say they want to get into cybersecurity, most people think about ethical hacking, but the industry is much, much bigger than that. Once you're able to know this is a domain I want to specialize in, then it's easy to know what certifications you need to get, potential experience you need to get. And then it makes things easier for you to navigate. Even stuff like being a BA is also a great way for you to move from that into disaster recovery, operational resilience, because you're so similar. So it's understanding the different domains, your skill sets, and which one allows you to navigate a lot quicker.
Amazing. That was me trying to find the unmute button. Thank you very much. Okay, so in fact, I've just seen a question how does somebody who has no tech experience get into cybersecurity?
So there are two ways of doing it. The way that would cost you money is I would recommend doing a certification. So you can either do the CISMP or the CompTIA Security Plus, which is like your entry level certifications. And then that allows you to have like a broad overview of cybersecurity. And you actually learn the different parts. You learn physical security, cybersecurity, and administrative security. And then you can kind of like decide which areas you're interested in. Now, the other way you can do it is, I know on YouTube, there are loads of videos on if you want to do your CompTIA Security Plus without you actually doing it. That will give you a different idea of like the industry and like the different things that consist of it. And then I always say, use your social network. So a lot of us, I know now with COVID it's a bit hard, but I know some of us, especially if you're religious, you might go to a church, you might go to a mosque, and there's a media team. So that's like a great way for you to test like your skills with like your social networks. Or if you even have friends who are starting businesses, it's a great way for you to kind of like test your skills and kind of build your portfolio that way as well. But again, you have to know which domain you're interested in, because that would be very helpful in regards to how you navigate your career.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so the next question that I've got is how you all got into the roles that you are in now. Like, what was your route, I suppose, to do what you're doing at the moment? I'm going to ask Nicola first. What was your journey?
Mine is not traditional at all. So before I got into tech, I was a conference organizer. I used to do national conferences for CBI. I think you've probably heard this before, Charlene. But yeah, that's basically what I did before. And then I think I went to a temp role. It was tech, and it was with a tech company. And I thought, what am I doing here? And I thought, I'm going to hate this, and I just don't know what to do with myself. But I did it, and actually found that I was more interested in what roles people were doing within the team. And I stayed for ages, more than I thought I would. And then they said to me, do you know, you've actually got some good skills. And they geared me to moved me towards being a tester. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that a job actually existed. But yeah, I did a bit more study around it and tried to find out some more about it, and realized I could actually get paid for doing some of the things I was doing at work internally for our teams. So that's how I got into testing, and I ended up doing qualification, and then just continued to move within those roles until I got to today. Yeah. So no university for me. I didn't do that until later. But yeah, certainly not studying for anything to do with tech, which is a shame, because I wish now I had done. But at the time when I was doing it, it really wasn't something that people really focused on. You could walk out of a job on Friday and into one on Monday. And yeah, as long as you had some skill set, you were okay. It's sad. I know it's much harder now.
Thank you. I think it would be really useful. You've mentioned the qualifications a couple of times.
Yeah, so I did at the time I did ISEB, but you can do ISTQB. And just to say on that note, the ISTQB software testing and ISTQB software testing exams are being overhauled, I think, and they're being updated to include stuff around AI, as I understand it. And then BCS are also doing some updates to stuff around AI. So if, you should really have some kind of qualification that links to something to do with AI if you intend to work for an organization that has a platform that's run on AI, or has models or anything else to do with AI. You should actually consider getting some kind of qualification, because that's coming in at some point in the next year or so, with the other regulations around AI systems. They're going to potentially say that people working on AI systems have to have some kind of qualification. So something to think about.
Thank you. Stephanie, what was your route? What was your journey?
Similar. Mine was very unconventional. So I actually was in cybersecurity without knowing I was in cybersecurity. So when I was doing my undergrad, I did the BBC Work Experience Program. I think they're still running it if anyone's interested. And I did it with BBC Africa. And I think this was a time where they didn't really understand social media. And being young, I was able to kind of give my unofficial guidance on that. And that experience actually allowed me to work on their BBC WhatsApp project. So I think a lot of people know that WhatsApp, especially if you're African, is rife for like fake news, and they were trying to like tackle misinformation. So they asked me to be a part of it. And then I think that was like my first introduction unofficially into cybersecurity. And then I think that experience helped me. So when I graduated, I worked with a government department, but they had a graduate scheme. And because of that experience, they put me on their digital transformation team within their legal strategy. So I was kind of like looking at the legal implications of moving from paper forms to online forms. And then as part of that, you had to do data protection. So that allowed me to have some experience of like understanding data protection policies. And then I saw a role on cyber intelligence looking at modern slavery, and it was just perfect having that background, but also doing some international development stuff during my undergrad as well. And then that was like my first proper introduction into the cyber world, but from a more human perspective rather than a technical perspective. And then after that, I kind of had a short stint in a council, and then moved back to academia to now do my PhD. So it's a very uncommon route. But I will say there, if anyone's also like interested in human rights and stuff, there are loads of charities who are also looking for people in that privacy space. So that's another way you can get into cybersecurity as well.
Thank you. I love the idea of ending up somewhere, not realizing you're doing it, and then that becomes the thing that you're all about. That's fantastic. And then you also support new people to get into the industry too. That's great. Andrea, how did you get into user research?
So I went to uni, like a lot of people do, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I didn't have an end goal in my mind. And I ended up doing psychology with sociology, and I always planned to do a master's. And it was in that time that I kind of realized that I liked the intersection between psychology and design, which is where I found ergonomics, human factors. And I went on to study that for my master's, and really focused in on computer interactions. And to be honest with you, I think what I really liked was that I could be quite creative with the way that I got answers. So I would use sort of like at the time physical prototypes. I would use sort of I got painting and things like that with participants. It allowed me to be creative, but also allowed me to provide like insights that were really interesting and like really relevant to the tech world at the time. It was really, this is a while ago, it was when smartphones were like still quite new, and they had all these gesture interactions with mobile phones, but they were all like really weird things that you wouldn't do with a mobile phone, like shake it to change a track and stuff like that. And it was just, I got a chance to really look into like what natural gestures we could be using instead that would be a lot more adoptable for people. And I really, really enjoyed it. And after that, I wanted to continue. I kind of realized I enjoyed researching and like just looking into a problem and just like literally falling into an issue and just being like, okay, really observe and really absorbed in it, and just really being able to like look at it from every single different angle and understand other perspectives and put together sort of a holistic view of it. So I got invited back actually to do my PhD funded at Loughborough, and I decided to do it in domestic energy use. So I really, again, I'm a very nosy person, which I think always helps as a researcher, but it allowed me to really like watch people in their homes and really find out like how people get comfortable, how people use technology in that process, how we use energy in that process, and really kind of delve into ways we could look into lower energy use in that comfort making process. And I was at one point thinking about staying in academia, I know that we are very few in academia, not many Black women, not many Black people in academia, especially where I was working, but it was just, what is an output there is a paper and presentations and conferences, and it didn't feel as fulfilling for me, because I felt like I wanted to see like what I found out, like then get action. So what's next, kind of thing. Like you want to, it's almost like you want the next series. So I decided to try and get out of academia and into industry, and I worked in Innovation Hub, and that was probably a really good stepping stone for me, because it was kind of a government organization, but also with like a consultancy face on it to small businesses. So we worked with loads of different SMEs that were working on all these different technologies, but didn't really have like a use case for it. And we were helping them, you know, define their use cases, or why would anyone want to do that with tech? And it was just really interesting, because you got to delve into things, problems of the future. Like for instance, one of the projects I worked on was driverless pods, and how pedestrians would interact with driverless pods. How would we know what the pod would be doing? How would the pod know what the human was doing? And it was just really, it was a really interesting project, something so far out there, and just not, you know, just a really random conversation to try and have with my mum afterwards and be like, oh, I was working on this. And she's like, okay, that's not happening. And also like all the, there's a lot of, I guess, concerns and anxiety around technology and where we're heading, and certain things that are a little bit more in the future, even driverless cars, even though they're here now, like there is still a lot of anxiety around it. And it's like having those conversations with people and kind of starting to unpick what is that anxiety about, and thinking about it from their angle, and how can we actually get them on board, and how can we show the need for it and how it's useful for them. So yeah, I really loved talking about delving into things with participants, customers, the people that actually use the technology at the end. And then yeah, I've been working, I contracted for a little while, which was really, it was fun. It was at a time when I felt like I wasn't being challenged enough, and I wanted something new. I wanted to be able to have the freedom of contracting, which didn't actually feel so free, because every day you want to work. I also, somebody who always, I think it's drilled in from doing my PhD, is you work until the work is done, rather than set hours. So I'm always somebody who put in it all. And I think with contracting, for me anyway, it was something I did need to balance with just like, you know, putting down my laptop and like walking away at points. But it was really fun. I got to work on some really interesting projects. I worked for John Lewis for a while on a Christmas project, which was really fun because it was in the middle of the summer and it was just bizarre. But you got to talk to loads of customers, and yeah, it's just, I think I just enjoy trying to help people as well, find out more about why they do the things they do, because it's something we don't really think about until somebody starts asking questions, and then you're like, actually, why do I hold this this belief? And it's when you start questioning that, people are like, oh, actually, that doesn't, there's things there, and it's kind of, it's useful, it's valuable for you, but it's also valuable for people when you speak to them about a variety of issues. So yeah, I took the job at Tills.com, a lot of I think it was 2 years, just over 2 years now. Tills.com is a tailored dog food company. You don't have to love dogs to work there, but it helps to. And it was a really great opportunity. It was we're kind of in high growth phase now. We've been expanding into Europe, and it was just an opportunity for me to really expand my skill set, get into management, you know, trying to solve how we get participants in Germany to partake in our research for a reasonable fee is, you know, one of those things that I just never thought I would be thinking about, but it's always fun. There's always something else to think about and a different angle for it. So yeah, that was my pathway, and it still really excites me. And I think that's the one thing I look for in a role. I'm somebody who I have had several different jobs, and I'm not afraid to leave a job. I always think there's something else around the corner. But when something doesn't excite me anymore, and I can't think, you know, it's doesn't get me up in the morning and there's nothing interesting to it, that's when I generally start to look around. But at the moment, every day is different. Every challenge is just even more of a challenge than I expected to be, but it's always doable. So yeah, that's my sort of journey into tech.
Thank you. I love that. Do you know what I love the most about all of you as well is how much it's so clear that you're so passionate about what you do. Absolutely love it. It's absolutely amazing to see. Thank you. So my next question is around expectations. So I think that for all of us, and I know I had this when I started as a developer, I thought it was going to be one thing, and then it was completely different. And then I felt really stupid for a long time. It was really scary. But what were your expectations on getting into the role that you're in, you know? So I know that it's probably a bit different because you almost, especially Nicola, Stephanie, you kind of ended up there it was almost like an organic way, if you know what I mean. But it'd be really good to know what you thought the whole thing was going to be about and how it really was, what the difference is. Nicola, yeah.
Me to go. I don't know, because like you say, it organically happened and I grew into understanding what was expected of me. And I think back in the earlier days, it was the roles were quite set. So you had different roles, a lot different to how it is now within agile teams, but mostly companies followed waterfall methodologies. And so you had quite set roles within a test team, for example, and you knew there was a career path and you knew what each of those roles did generically across every company you worked in. So it was less about finding out that you didn't like the role and more about maybe going to work for somebody or on a project for a company and finding out you don't like the project. It was more of that. And that happened a couple of times when I was contracted, not very often. I tended to stay in my contracts for a very long time. It would be a rarity if I didn't. And if I left very quickly, you knew it was because I didn't like the company or I didn't like the project I was working on, but it didn't happen very often. So it's less about the role not being a fit and more about the project or the company not being a fit. And, like Andrea was saying, if you're not happy, you move on, you find something else, you're going to find something. I used to be like that quite a lot. I've slowed down in that regard. I'm less like that now. I've got responsibilities now, so, not footloose and fancy free anymore. So I have to, think carefully before I get up and walk out of a job. But I actually love my job right now, so I don't need to do that. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Stephanie, how about you? What were your expectations?
So I think I was quite lucky because I didn't even have a certification. I think what helped me was experience within my previous role. So like working on like data protection allowed me to then move more into that role, which is why I always say, if you can like be the GDPR champion or something within your workplace, that's like a good way of getting experience before you move into a different role. I think when I worked in intelligence, it was quite interesting because I felt like I was doing a lot of things that I would normally do. Not like I'm a natural stalker, but sometimes, especially if you have a curious mind, you search things and then like understanding open source intelligence, but on steroids and kind of like how people think. And I think one of the great things as well, if you're working in the non-technical side, is there is a bit of psychology in it. You have to think about a hacker, like what is a hacker supposed to do? Sometimes they do this like red versus blue team where you can act as the position of a hacker versus somebody else. And then you guys role play to try and find out step by step how you can protect things. So it's a lot of interesting skills. There's like role play, understanding from different perspectives. I think it's not as technical as I thought it would be. Definitely having other skills is just as important. And I think specifically soft skills, I can argue, are equally as important as technical skills. Unfortunately, cybersecurity is one of those places that it's almost who you know sometimes. So I always say network, because some jobs won't be out for you to see. You might find out through networking that, oh, there's this position. Even roles like being an evangelist as well is another great way. So if you have a blog or you're passionate about it, you're able to show your passion, is something that you can get into. Now that I'm doing my PhD, you don't have to be an expert to do a PhD, I found out. So if you don't feel confident in your skills, or if you don't feel like, I haven't worked in this industry for a long time, that's not the case. I think you're looking for someone who has an open mindset and is willing to learn. And I think that's not just applicable with like PhD, but even in workplace. A lot of employers, if you show that passion, that you're going out of your way to learn more about the industry, to be more commercially aware, then you're more likely to get a shot. So I would say those are the things that I've kind of like expectation versus reality.
Thank you. And Andrea?
Right, that was just absorbing all of that. That was really a good answer. I think for me, I think drawing on what Nicola said, actually, sometimes what I find with some roles that I've been in the past is that the company hasn't sort of met my expectations, in that they made it sound like it was all great, and they listed all these wonderful things, and then you get there and you realize that there's just disorder, and it's not what you expected, and the culture isn't quite as you expected either. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. There can still be room for growth in those kind of roles. I think in my current role, I knew I was coming in senior, but I guess what I didn't realize was sort of, I think the pace here has been more than other startups and other organizations I've worked at. So I think the pace was a little bit more, especially at the beginning. Sort of first project I had was France, like sort out France, basically. And I had no sort of experience. I don't speak French. I had no experience in doing something like that. So it was really it was a bit of a challenge to get through that. But it's, I guess, I think the thing I probably would say needs to be met in terms of expectations is growth. I think when that doesn't, if you feel like you are not able to grow in the position, if that disappears, that's when you really need to think about what you are getting from that role. I try my best not to stay in a role where I feel like it's just stagnant, even if the other parts of it might not be exactly right. I think the growth element is really, really important, because it's at the end of the day, it's your time and your energy that you're giving to it. So you must be getting something back as well, not just getting paid, but also, growing into your next role, essentially, which is always really good. I must admit, the role I'm in at the moment very much has supported that. When I came in, they were like, we're here to grow you. Even if you don't stay, we're here to grow you. And it has been that way. So you're always looking for the alignment between what they've said and what they do, and when that's right, it's really, really good. It's not always the way, but try and take what you can from roles when some of your expectations aren't met.
Thank you. I really like the fact that you also focused on the company as well, if you know what I mean. So there's the company view, but also the expectations within an actual physical role. And I think it's hard to know what you would expect from a company sometimes. And I think that it's almost normal that a lot of the time it's not normally what it seems, right? So because you're just never going to know until you start. But I think it's good to have some sort of expectation and then know how much they're ticking off as well. Okay, so now it'd be great to know from all of you what you've done to enable yourselves to be successful. How have you set yourselves up to be successful in the roles you do? I guess it would also be, also useful to think about, not necessarily just in your particular role, but in a more general sense, like how can people set themselves up for success when they start new positions? Stephanie, I'm going to go to you first.
So I think for me is having a curious mind and continuously learning. So for me, although I said like I didn't have a certification going into cybersecurity, I've gotten my CISMP and a lead auditor certification. I'm also looking for opportunities to grow myself. I know Andrea said that, she didn't like academia, but I know that's somewhere that I would love to be. So, now by the end of this month, I'll be a graduate teaching assistant. So looking for opportunities to kind of like grow my skills in that aspect of like teaching and making cybersecurity a fun subject for people is something that I definitely want to do. I think for other people, it's again, looking at the different domains within cybersecurity. You don't have to stick with one, but if you see like there's another one that you're interested in, trying to see within your role, how can you either ask your employer to maybe sponsor a certification, or maybe join committees where you can use that skills, or maybe, like I said, like using your social networks, whether that's your church, mosque, friends who have businesses, and then telling them to give you a LinkedIn review, stuff like that. Think about interesting ways in which you can build your profile and your personal brand as well. Even if you don't want to do a blog, you can do a podcast where you're actually speaking to people that you might admire and asking them questions, and they're just having a curious mind. I think there are definitely different ways, but I would say having a personal brand is a great way to set yourself, having a personal brand in your workplace, but also having a personal brand outside work, I think is a great way for you to set yourself for success.
Thank you. Andrea, how about you?
I would say I would echo what Stephanie has said. Absolutely. I feel like you have to kind of drive your own career. There's only so much a company or a school can do for you. You kind of have to take the interest in driving it as well. And whether that means doing extra courses or just exploring different areas is really important to make sure you do that. I read a question in the comments around like degrees. I would just point out that I work with a lot of people that don't have degrees, and I've interviewed and spoken to other user researchers that don't have degrees, have come into it from a different angle, or had very varied careers. My colleague who's also a user researcher, she was a flight attendant, and then she was product manager, and now she's a user researcher. A lot of people in tech don't have very like, I did this and then I did this and then I did this. It's not all like plodding along on a line. And I think that is something also to bear in mind. It's like, don't let not having a degree kind of like get in the way in any way. I think you can show that you have those skill sets anyway. You can learn in that area. There are so many online courses, so many now, some of them free, some of them not that expensive, and it's worth just bearing that in mind as well. But yeah, definitely be proactive about it, and also have career conversations with your supervisors, your managers. I found that quite helpful. Or if it's not them, if they're not the one for you, as somebody within your organization who you can have that conversation with, and just find out about other people's paths, but also what opportunities there are at that company for growth. Because sometimes when you get hired, they don't think beyond the immediate need for you. And you have to then try and shape that path and be like, okay, well, I can't do this forever. I want to move into this. Is that opportunity here? And in fact, on Friday, I left a colleague in the office who was, Thursday, who was writing out all the things that she does in her role and all the things that she wants to be doing in her role. And she's going to give that to her manager and be like, okay, well, how do we make this happen? Do we need to hire somebody? Because I can't do all of this and grow in the same role. So yeah, really take control of that conversation.
Fantastic, thank you. Some great advice there. Nicola, you as well. How have you set yourself up for success?
I would say that I've always been, fairly lucky. I moved from job to job fairly quickly, especially when I was contracting. And I would also say that I didn't really do anything about branding myself or anything like that when I was contracting. It was purely, like Stephanie was saying, who you know. And then someone would say, oh, there's this job going here, and I've mentioned them to you. I've mentioned your name to them, and you should apply for this now because you'll get it, basically, or something like that. And it wasn't headhunting or anything like that. It just literally was being in the right place at the right time and knowing people. So a lot of networking really is key. And I know that we've kind of got out of that because of COVID, but you can still, there are lots of ways to still network, and I think it's really important. But then obviously the brand thing is now huge. Market's a lot more saturated. You have to make yourself stand out. And also, for me, my early career, I didn't really give that much back. I was all about me. But actually, as I've been in the industry longer, I realized I don't see that many women coming up behind me, especially in testing and quality assurance. It's been, it's only now I see more women going into it. And certainly when I was contracting, I would go to contract teams and the teams would be huge and it would be mostly men. And if you saw another woman, it was like, another lady, it would be a big deal. But obviously it's about trying to retain women within tech as well. Obviously people want to move on and do different things, but we've got to try and help people to stay in the industry as well. And, just to pick up the point Andrea made about degrees, I know I said I've gone to university, but I actually didn't finish my degree and I wasn't doing anything to do with tech. I was doing astronomy, which is my geek, nerdy thing that I like. So I was doing astronomy and planetary science. And I only didn't finish it because I was going through a divorce. But at some point when I'm 60, like my mum says to me, you're 60, you'll be doing your degree and then you'll do your PhD, which is actually what my mum's doing. She's doing her PhD at 62. So you can study at any point you want, and I would say that I think that tech roles for a few years have been quite, I would say for since maybe the mid noughties, there was this thing about go to university, go and do your degree, go and get a tech job if that's the journey you wanted to take. So do computer science and then go and do a degree. But actually we're moving out of that now. And I think that's got something to do with diversity and inclusion, not saying on job descriptions or job adverts, you must have a degree or you must have a PhD or something like that. But because that actually lends itself to cutting people out of applying for roles where they might have the actual experience from working in the industry to actually apply. So you probably see the degree stuff a lot less now. There's nothing wrong with getting your degree, absolutely go for it and get it. But if you don't have a degree, don't be put off for applying for roles. You'll see a lot less jobs with that on there just because of diversity and inclusion and not wanting to, add a level of bias into the job adverts.
Thank you so much. I was going to pick up on a couple of things that you've just said. One around, the letting people know what you want to do. I think you've all sort of mentioned that network element. And I only applied for my very first job. I've not really applied for a job ever since then because it's all been through my network that I've got the next job. So it's always so important to tell people, actually, I want to do this. And it might not be that they give it you internally. It might be that they know somebody externally that they give you a role with. So it's really important. And you can totally do PhDs when you get older. My mum's just started, well, not started. She's been doing hers and she's like 65 now doing her PhD.
See, yeah.
My mum's doing group of like 60-year-olds doing their PhDs.
I'm sure that will be me at some point because I'm determined before, I leave this call. I intend to have my degree and PhD in astronomy. Not sure where I'm going to use it. Maybe I'll be on the sky at night or something on TV. I don't know. But yeah, I intend to do it before, I will do it at some point, but not right now. I've got other responsibilities.
No, I think it's great. I think it's just the key thing, isn't it? There's no point where you can't learn new things or do new things, or you can always get your passions done.
And always keep your skills up to date. Once you're in a job, don't be complacent. Get yourselves a mentor, somebody who can help you to keep small goals in place, and always ask questions of people that you work with, your peers. If there is some training that you want but you think that your work won't pay for it, actually make a case for it. Make a case for them paying for it, because you've just got to be, I think in this day and time, you've got to not sit and just expect things to be handed to you. You need to make a case for things. You need to let people know when you're not happy within your current role, so that they can, you can work with them to make your job better. Companies don't want to spend a lot of money hiring you to then have you leave. At the end of the day, they will work with you to try and make you happy, because if you go out and tell people that you're unhappy about it, and there are very public ways to do that now with apps like Glassdoor, you can really, make a company look bad, but you shouldn't ever have to be that at that point. You should be able to have open dialogue and make the changes that you need to make your job better.
Thank you. And then, so I guess a lot of the people here now, they're learning to be full stack developers, but we also have a lot of career changes as well. So people who may have changed career, they're trying to change career. It would be great to know if there are any transferable skills that could be useful from a previous career into the one that you're doing now. Andrea, how about you? Any transferable skills that would be useful in your role?
Absolutely. I think one of the main key skills of conducting research is being able to build rapport with somebody quite quickly in an interview. At the moment, our team, we have, as I mentioned, somebody who used to be a flight attendant, which is very much a customer facing role. We also have somebody who used to be a CX agent, who, again, another customer facing role. And you need to have that coupled with a curiosity and I would say definitely a proactiveness as well, to want to delve into things further and be able to also analyze, so a bit of an analytical way of thinking, to be able to put together, what does this mean? How is this important to the company? What does the company need to do in order to fix this for customers? And also think a little bit commercially as well. So because we touch so many teams within a company. We work with PMs, we work with we work with product managers, product designers. I don't get that close to engineers. No disrespect. It's just there's always a product manager in between us. But it's great whenever we have workshops when we bring in everybody and we bring in engineers, and they're thinking the way that they think about things, and being able to talk through, oh, this would be great for customers, and they're like, actually, no, we can't do that. And it's great to have like answers straight away about what our capabilities are. So I would say definitely any tech jobs where you have to understand sort of how a product comes together, how you work together within a cross-functional team. I think those roles tend to touch upon research. Our product managers do research, our product designers do research, our marketing team sometimes do research. So it's not like we hold all the skills, and we are very much about training up other people in the business to be able to do their own work. So I think definitely there are transferable skills if you're able to build that rapport, and you have just a general curiosity into an area. It doesn't have to be big, you just want to find out and delve into it. I think it can be quite good, quite a good area to get into tech. And it's probably the least techie of the tech jobs, I guess, in a way, in that a lot of people go, oh, it's just soft skills. It's not, well, actually it's soft skills and a little bit more, because you do have to be able to analyze, you do need to be able to be objective, and you do need to be able to actually gather those insights that are actually important, not just sort of give everything. So yeah, I would say if you are in a customer facing role and you think research might be something for you, it might be worth looking into it. Also, if you're quantitative, if you're data analysis or anything like that, that could be a great area as well. There's so many quantitative research roles as well as qualitative. Typically people are either strong in qualitative or quantitative research, but not both. And a lot of places would love people that are a bit more stronger in quantitative research, and that is definitely my weakness. So yeah, definitely if you're in data, definitely a place you could get into.
Thank you. Just to let everybody know, we're going to be moving into open floor questions soon, so feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll be coming to them soon. Nicola, the same question to you. So transferable skills, what could somebody have come from to, I don't know why I'm struggling to ask this question, but what could they have come from to work in the
No, I'm pretty much of the mind, because I mentor lots of people who are coming into tech, you know, so they'll come in from maybe a marketing background or something like that, and they think they've absolutely not got the skills to do it, but actually they totally do. Sometimes it's about your previous roles or the area you've worked in, and it really does help you to, you know, to then grasp whatever job it is that you're going to do within tech. So a lot of marketing people tend to go towards, or this is what I've seen so far, towards product management jobs. And I'm not sure why that is, but you know, I just see that happening a lot. I don't know if you know AO.com, they sell washing machines and stuff. They have actually got a really strong engineering function, and their and product teams as well. And they've recently run for International Women's Day a conference just about the same thing I'm talking about. If you're coming into tech with no experience of tech or coming in from a different area, and it's been amazing. They've done really good things in encouraging people to come in and to think about doing something that they're probably not skilled to do, but then picking up those skills once they're in a role.
Thank you. And the same to you, Stephanie. So transferable skills for cybersecurity.
So I think I've mentioned some already, like with role play, acting, having a curious mind, being open-minded. I think if you have a strong problem-solving skills and you're just curious, that would be great. I think an invaluable skill is being able to know the best of both worlds. So understanding technical world and being able to relate that to a non-technical audience is invaluable. So if you are great at communication, that's something that you can definitely do. But I think it's just having a curious mind. What I've noticed with Sadir is that we have a lot of legal people, which is quite interesting. So if you have attention to detail and you like talking, cybersecurity would be great. If you like talking, actually, there is all about security education and training, so that could be good for you if that's something that you like doing. If you like a more back end, then maybe being a SOC analyst might be more useful, and threat intelligence, where you're not really talking to people but you're staying in your computer all day. But having that communication skill, I think, is probably the biggest thing, being able to communicate to a non-technical audience, because that's what will push you to that management level and potentially CISO level. So if you're able to have great communication skills, I'll say work on that, because that would take you very, very far within cybersecurity.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So much valuable advice. The last question that I've got is recommendations or any tips for the students on the Black Coder Bootcamp, but also people who are at other stages in their career who might be in the event or listening as well. Nicola, recommendations and tips.
I think I've mentioned some of them. So, you know, obviously we've been talking about making sure that your skills are always up to date. Once you've got a job, don't put your feet up and think, I can now coast. It's not like that at all. You know, once you're in the job, you've got to then try and keep it. So best thing you can do is always just make sure that your skills are up to date. Make sure that, you know, you have somebody within the business to champion you. So somebody within your team or peers that you can reach out to. It's hard to be social during, you know, COVID and everything, but if your workplace, you're new and your workplace is putting on any social events, do try to, you know, attend at least a few as much as you can, because it does help. I struggle to do that now because I've got a little one, but, you know, I'm as social as I can be. I actually reach out to colleagues just to say, how are you? Not to, you know, ask them to do anything for me. And then they end up telling me, you know, stuff that's been happening with them. So I end up having quite a good, you know, relationship with people I work with. And that's how I try to be, like almost like a work mum, if you like. I've just fallen into that role. But just try and keep yourself social, network a lot. That's my big thing. And like Stephanie has been saying, it's really, sometimes it is about who you know. It's really sad and it's horrible sometimes to think that, because you want to genuinely be able to apply for roles that are out there and know that you stand a good chance. And if you apply, you do. But it's a lot of roles in tech do come up through people talking to each other first, and then those jobs will be advertised. And that happens a lot for contracting, less so for permanent roles, but a lot for contracting. It's about knowing people and keeping yourself involved in stuff that's happening in your community. And I know that in tech, it's now people are not so keen on things like certifications and things, but I say again, please consider, if you're going to work in anything to do with AI. Sorry, my little boy's having a coughing fit here. Are you okay? Good. Okay. Think about doing some kind of certification in that area when that becomes a thing. So it's coming soon. Don't rush off to do it now, but consider that down the line, just so you keep yourself okay for the roles that you've currently got or are thinking about going for. Just keep in touch with your community based on what you're doing. Like Stephanie said, if you're in cybersecurity or something, keep in touch with your community and what's coming up and what's hot, basically what's new, and things that you might be wanting to learn in terms of training. Make sure you do all of that. That's it from me, really.
Thank you. A lot of very useful recommendations there. I know they'll take a lot away from that. Andrea, how about you? Recommendations, tips for the community?
I would say I would actually echo what the Stephanie and Nicola have said. To be fair, I don't think I've ever got a job through my network. Maybe my network is weak, I don't know. But I always end up applying to roles or being found by recruiters on LinkedIn, which is generally, at the moment, there is an insane amount of jobs out there. So every day it's, are you looking? So that's typically how I've sort of found my roles. I would say definitely make sure you actually have a LinkedIn that is up to date. Make sure you actually put in, a description of the things that you do in your role. And if you wish to also connect it to an online CV or portfolio, if that's something you have. If you don't, that's absolutely fine. Have a picture, make sure you're there essentially, and don't be afraid as well to reach out to people if you think they might be useful to be connected to. It's you'll then be connected to them, but you'll also be connected to their network, and you'll see things but what that they'll put up, and just keep I think if you're looking for a role in particular, make sure you try and get an idea of what that role actually looks like in real life. I think that's one thing that I would say I've definitely learned over my career, is that sometimes you think it's going to look one way and it doesn't necessarily work out that way. I think it's really hard. It's a bit like, you're trying to commit to something that you've not had a chance to try out. It's like buying a house, because you look into a house and then you're supposed to put down X number of pounds on it without actually living in it and knowing whether that space really works for you. It's kind of a similar thing, and it's a lot. I always think it's a little bit strange that we have to move in that way. But if you can get close to somebody who's doing a role that is the role that you want to do, really, really drill into what does that actually look like, what are the pros, what are the cons, and just a lot of people are really happy to help, and LinkedIn is a great way of actually connecting with some of those people that you might not necessarily meet, especially at the moment with the fact that there's so many less conferences and events on that you can actually meet people in person. Just always know that if you're in a bit of a rubbish place, or you're in a job, or you're like feeling a little bit lost, know that literally everybody has felt that way at some point, and everybody overcomes it eventually, and you will too. So just make sure you bear that in mind, and those dark moments, that there is actually something out there. It's just maybe not the thing that you're doing right now, and just kind of know that there's something coming for you. So yeah, bear that in mind.
Thank you so much. Stephanie.
I think everyone's kind of said most of it. What I will say for cybersecurity is to know your domains. Similar to what Andrea said, speak to people within those roles to kind of see if those domains are what you're interested in. And then follow it up by getting a certification within it. Network and update yourself. You can do that through hackathons, capture the flag, black hat competitions. Cybersecurity is one of those weird places that people love competition, so definitely get into that. Cloud is becoming increasingly important, so definitely try to get upskilled in cloud, because cloud security is the next big thing I'm seeing. Be bold. I think one thing I've noticed with women, especially us as Black women, is that sometimes if we don't meet a lot of, a high percentage of the role, we don't apply. So if you meet just 50% of the role, apply, be bold. A trick you can use is on LinkedIn, if you see a job that you like, research the company, look for people within that, message them saying, I'm interested in your role and about the company, I want to find out more, and then try and establish a relationship, because they may be able to refer you for that role. And I think with salary negotiation, Glassdoor has been my saving grace. So I'd recommend using that. And I think just taking things easy, mental health, don't burn out, take things easily. And I think that's kind of something I'm also learning. So as you're trying to go, make sure there's a balance with rest as well.
Thank you. Andrea, is that a hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate on what Stephanie just said there. Always negotiate on salary. That was something I learned really late in life, but you should always negotiate on salary. There's always an upper limit that you could probably be hitting. So yeah, don't accept the first offer.
Yeah, definitely. I remember doing a salary negotiation, and I put a number down. I put a number down, and they were like, "Really, you'll work here for that?" And I was like, "No, I made the biggest mistake." They go higher than what you think every time, because it's probably lower than it should be. Okay, we have some questions in the chat. One of them is it necessary, or would you recommend someone to have some kind of paid security system on their devices or beyond, e.g. a free version of Avast which does basic checks and has a basic firewall? I think that's to you, Stephanie.
I think you kind of answered your own question. The free version will secure your device to a certain degree, but you definitely, if you want more security, it's better to do the paid version. It also depends. Sometimes you can get free security. If you're working, some companies do offer free security stuff to protect your devices. If you are in education, sometimes you can ask for a bursary for those sort of things. But the free version can only help you to a particular stage. But if you want full protection, I'll definitely say paid version. But even that, in cybersecurity, you learn that nothing is ever fully secure. There's always a vulnerability. So keep that in mind as well.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Maybe to think there's nothing we can do. No, it's fine. We've got another question. During quality assurance or analysis work, have you experienced a time where there was a particularly ethical red flag, and how did you deal with it? Nicola?
I guess that's for me.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily anything to do with a project. I think it's the times where you might hit something that makes you think, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do about this? And it actually has a potentially damaging effect on the company you're working for example. It's usually around data. So that's never happened where I am now, but it has happened on previous projects that I've been in finance, for example, or just trying to think if it's been anything other than finance. I think both times it's happened to me, it's been in, actually no, there was once for a government project, but I won't talk about exactly what it was, but, but in finance, obviously the use of data long before there were any talks about ethics within like AI or anything like that, just in general, before they even talked about ethics in companies at all. There were issues around data that I've dealt with, and I've had to flag it up. But there's always been a process for how you handle that internally. I've never worked anywhere where there wasn't a process for handling something that could be potentially damaging to the company that maybe I found through testing. I don't actually test that much now because of my level, but when I want to, I do get my hands dirty. And, potentially with working on AI systems, you could come across something that might raise a red flag, but there will always be a process within your company for dealing with that. And there has to be, especially if it's data. Stephanie's touched on data earlier when she was talking, and it's definitely something that you need to make sure that you keep up to date with the ethics and things that are coming out in the industry, and the standards that are coming up and being updated for dealing with data. So just nothing really particularly from a company point of view, but there have been times where there have been projects where the data's been a bit iffy, and I've had to raise it. I hope that answers that.
Thank you. And then one for you, Andrea. I think when you were probably talking about how passionate you were about user research, was there a particular insight when you were doing user research that surprised you?
That's such a good question, and probably one I can't answer that well because of just NDAs and stuff. But I would say what surprises me at the moment is the differences to our online experience by country, and some of the actual stark differences in, for instance, like the German market and the French market, in the way that they actually show information on their website. I hadn't realized there had been so much localization done by other companies, and I didn't realize that was such a necessity until I got into this role. And it's just a really interesting area because it's all about, once upon a time I did want to get into cultural ergonomics, which is like, what are the difference, how do we look at different problems from different countries' perspective, or different perspectives, or different races and things like that. And it's one of those things I hadn't really clocked when I've been working in all my other UK-based and UK-only companies, that there was such a stark difference between the way that information is organised and given and provided on websites. So I say at the moment I'm always very kind of intrigued at the way that different markets are seeing our proposition, and we're having to like shift things to ensure that we are meeting their needs, and how different it is from the UK. So and I think I kind of thought Europe all be the same, and it's really not. so I think it's I always like the fact that those things still surprise me as well. So that's my current kind of interest.
Thank you. So to all of you, and I'll start with Nicola on this, do you work with or do coding in any aspect of your role or personal projects?
I do no coding, and I don't really, as I say, I don't test anymore. A lot of my role is attending lots of meetings and organising and making sure that the right people are working on projects, or, just making sure that I'm available to firefight or answering queries. I do a lot of that, just meetings from morning till night, really. So now at this level, it's less about being hands-on, but I do get hands-on sometimes, but it's rare. Usually when I have the odd hour, and they usually regret when I do that because I find stuff. So and I think, what's going on here, but I don't have that much. I'm probably the wrong person to ask, actually.
Curiously though, there we go. Do testers use code? Do they?
Yeah. So, when I'm hiring, I'm always looking for what we call them unicorns. So we want people to be full stack, but we find that as I've found and throughout my career, that like more recently, that full stack testers, for example, tend to contract because they can command lots of money and don't really want to go permanent anywhere. So it's quite difficult when we go to hire. We want people to have full stack skills if we can get them, but actually we struggle. So we tend to go for people who are either front end or back end, and then we say, but would you be willing to do this? And so we usually work with people who want to learn more skills, and naturally, by the nature of what we do anyway, most of our team will pick up skills from either side if when they're working with various teams, because we work in agile teams and we can move people across teams if we need to. They need to have kind of like not necessarily an absolute full stack skill set, but it helps. So the longer they're with us, the more they'll pick up anyway. So yeah, you'll pick them up on the job. So if you can't be all things to all people, I will say, try and keep an open mind about learning on the job, and show that you're enthusiastic about learning more skills that may be outside of your comfort zone, but it's good because it's good for your CV, it's good for your future employment and stuff like that.
Thank you. Stephanie, do you work with or do any coding? And does it happen in cybersecurity?
I did, and then I forgot about it, and now I have to relearn it. So I think much earlier in my career, I did learn coding, and that actually helped me, I would say, open doors for me trying to get into cybersecurity. But then now that I've lost it, I have to relearn it for how I do data analytics or show my data from my research. But one thing that I know from speaking to a lot of people in the industry is that they normally start with PHP as a coding language, in case anyone is interested in what type of language people tend to be interested in. PHP and Python is what I've heard that is quite a big thing within the industry if you want to go more on the technical route.
Fantastic, thank you. For those of you on the bootcamp, we do Python, I believe, in November or December, so it's coming for you. And you, Andrea, any coding?
So I did try coding once, you'd be surprised, HTML. Obviously did the hello world, but I wouldn't say I do it in my day job. It's not a thing we really need to do. We do need to occasionally go into inspect mode and maybe insert a line of something which we've been told very clearly what to do by an engineer, but it's very, very rare that I touch it. However, I think it's important to know a little bit about it, because I think it helps you know what's possible, especially because part of our job is always to make recommendations on how we can change things, and just having an understanding of the capability of what we can actually do is really, really helpful. And sometimes that might include talking to engineers and just figuring out what that is. But generally speaking, no, we don't. But there is no reason why, if you wanted to also have coding under your belt and do user research, you can do that. There's plenty of places, I'm sure, that would be like, sure.
Andrea, can I ask you a question? Is there a big difference between what you do and user experience?
As user experience researcher or user experience designer? Because I would say
designer then. Okay, so right, so there's separate things within that as well.
Yeah, so me and
Right,
Charlene have had this conversation possibly 200 times. but
sorry.
No, it's a really good question, because it is useful to know. So UX designers typically are focused on the experience. Then usually UX/UI designers, UX user experience/user interface designers, and they will put together the components and probably have a little bit more understanding of coding as well. I know a few of our actual product designers, which is kind of the umbrella term for UI and UX designers, come from a engineering background and have got into design. So yeah, it's definitely transferable skills between any jobs in product, to be quite honest. You just have to pick the one for you and then move about whenever you feel like it.
Thank you. That's definitely a question that I've asked Andrea loads of times because I can't retain the information for some reason.
It's fine. No, it's a really good question because also UX designers do sometimes do research as well. So it just
And there's a bit of testing in that as well, accessibility and things like that. So,
yeah, 100%, yeah.
You've taken our jobs, thanks.
We always need you, honestly.
I think they're saying that now developers do all things. So I think we're taking your jobs. Sorry.
We're becoming you. That's what's happening. We're having to learn development skills. So yeah.
Stephanie, do you do any coding? Oh wait, haven't we just asked that question? We have. Come around. Final question. This is the last question in the chat, and we are over time now. So let's try and do maybe 1 or 2 sentences. Because I think you've already covered it, to be honest, because you've given so much wealth and so much knowledge. How do you keep on being proactive at work and not slow down and just become someone who's coasting? So how do you stay proactive? A couple of sentences. Nicola, you first.
I just keep having conversations. I never have a day where I don't have anything to do. So I've always usually know my diary's full up for weeks in advance. So I know exactly what's going to happen, who I need to speak to, and I just keep conversations. Communication is key to making sure that you're not resting on your laurels. There's always something for you to do. Get involved in another team's work, be nosy. That's it.
Thank you. And Stephanie, staying proactive, how do you do it?
Networking and just trying to put yourself in things, whether it's committees, any opportunities that you see going forward, put it there. Also being like commercial awareness. If you're like in a specific industry, look at cybersecurity news regarding that industry and then mention it at work. If you do that continuously, you then be seen as a cybersecurity person, even though you don't have the cybersecurity skills. So again, personal branding.
Thank you. And Andrea.
I'd say this is a really good question because in the last year, I think it's been really challenging to continually be proactive and not just coast because we've had to deal with the world being on fire and the pandemic at the same time. I would say be kind to yourself if you do have points where you think that you are actually just coasting a little. Like it's not the worst thing if you're not constantly doing something. But I would say in terms of tips to make sure that you are proactive is make sure you're having new conversations with new people. If you're finding that you're not getting anywhere with a particular manager or somebody in your company when you're talking about things you want to do and it seems like you're just hitting a brick wall, try and see if there's other people you could speak to and kind of get that conversation going. And if you feel like you are being stunted by a place that you're working, really just have a full-on reflection, look fully at the role and find out whether it's really right for you, because it's okay if it's not. Not saying leave, I'm just saying look at it and think about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all of the advice, all the insight into your roles. I'm very excited that now everybody will have some insight into cybersecurity, quality assurance, testing, business analysis, user research, user experience, so many things that you've all shed some light on. And it's been very, very, very useful. So thank you so much for your time. And everybody who's attended, thank you for attending on a Friday night. I hope that you have something nice planned after this, and if not, maybe you want to re-watch it and just write down all those tips. So thank you so much, everybody. And Stephanie, Nicola, Andrea, thank you so much for all of the knowledge that you've shared this evening. Have a lovely, lovely rest of your Friday and weekend. I'll see you all later.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.